What if I told you that for thousands of women of the Gilded Age, the most luxurious day of their lives was the beginning of a nightmare that was forbidden to speak of aloud? We are used to seeing dazzling dresses, diamond tiaras, and calm faces of aristocratic women in old photographs, but we rarely think about what was hidden behind those frozen gazes. In a world where reputation was worth more than gold, a young girl's fate was sealed long before she realized she was an individual. Gilded Age mansions with their velvet curtains and marble staircases often became not palaces, but golden cages with the strictest regime. Wealth did not bring freedom. It only imposed even heavier chains of obligations that could not be broken without scandal. Watch the video to the end to find out how arranged marriages broke women's psyches and why many of them preferred illness to fulfilling their marital duties. Are you ready to learn the truth about how mothers were forced to betray their daughters for the sake of propriety? Victorian upbringing was based on a total denial of the physical side of life, creating a vacuum that was filled with fear. Girls from high society were shielded from any information about anatomy or relationships between the sexes, believing that innocence equaled absolute ignorance. Friends whispered bits of information to each other, which were often far from the truth and resembled scary fairy tales. Some heard from a maid that marriage was hard work and pain, while others repeated overheard conversations of older sisters. These distorted fragments formed a picture of the upcoming wedding night as a kind of sacrifice. The fear of the unknown was so strong that many brides had nervous breakdowns even before their wedding day. They couldn't ask their fathers questions because it was considered improper, and they couldn't ask their mothers because they looked away. The girl was left alone with her imagination, which painted the darkest pictures of the future. The pressure was intensified by the fact that it was practically impossible for a girl from a good family without her own fortune to refuse a marriage. She understood that her only function was to marry well and strengthen her family's position. Her personal feelings, fears, or desires were of no importance in the balance of dynastic interests. She was a commodity, beautifully wrapped in silk and lace, passed from her father's hands to her husband's. The realization of her helplessness and lack of choice weighed heavier than a corset tightened to the limit. In this world, a woman had no say even in matters concerning her own body. Behind the closed doors of luxurious boudoir, real tragedies unfolded that were not reported in the society columns. History knows of cases when brides ran away right from the bedroom, unable to withstand the psychological pressure of the moment. But they had nowhere to run. Society condemned runaways, and their families returned them to their husbands. The reputation of the family was more important than the happiness and mental well-being of an individual woman. This cruel lesson was quickly learned. There is no way out, only humility and the ability to endure. I'm very interested to hear your point of view. What do you think about this approach to upbringing, where silence was considered the best defense? Write about it in the comments and be sure to subscribe to the channel. Guess what happened next when the bedroom doors closed and the mask came off? Often the problem was not only ignorance, but also who exactly was next to the young girl. Marriages in the age of splendor were rarely based on love. They were mergers of capital, titles, and influence. The groom was often much older than the bride, a man from another generation, with different habits and a different view of the world. For a young girl who had grown up in the sterile atmosphere of maidenhood, this man was a complete and frightening stranger. The courtship period, if there was one at all, took place under the strict supervision of duendes and relatives in public places. Young people were never left alone. Their communication was limited to polite phrases about the weather and music. The groom could not know the true character of the bride, and she could not understand what kind of person he was. The full depth of his nature, his true desires and habits, were revealed only when the bedroom door was closed. And often this revelation came as a shock from which the woman could not recover for the rest of her life. For many men, their wife was property that they had acquired legally by signing a marriage contract. The concept of a woman's consent or desire in the marital bedroom was virtually absent from legal and moral practice. The law was on the husband's side, giving him full rights to his wife's body at any time. This awareness of complete defenselessness before a man she barely knew paralyzed a woman's will. She became a thing, an expensive piece of furniture that could be used at will. Sometimes, on the contrary, the husband was too demanding and passionate, which was no less frightening than indifference. Not understanding the nature of male desire, the girl perceived his passion as aggression or madness. It seemed to her that she was doing something terrible, sinful, by participating in this act. The feeling of shame mixed with the fear of pain, turning the night into endless torture. She prayed for it to end quickly and for her husband to leave her alone. Even if her husband was kind and tried to be gentle, the wall of misunderstanding between them was too thick. He did not know how to approach a creature who fainted at the slightest hint of intimacy. His attempts to calm his wife were often perceived as new tricks leading to the inevitable finale. Both spouses were hostages to a situation created by society and upbringing. This tragedy of lack of contact was played out in thousands of bedrooms around the world. Do you think it was possible to build happiness on such a foundation of complete alienation? We will look for the answer to this question in the next chapter, where we will discuss one thing that changes everything. The secret that changes everything was not in words, but in the clothes that women wore every day. Preparations for the wedding night began not in the evening, but early in the morning, when the girl was encased in the armor of her wardrobe. The corset of the age of splendor was not just an item of lingerie. It was a frame that shaped not only the body, but also behavior. Tightened to the point of being unable to breathe fully, a woman was physically incapable of experiencing strong emotions without the risk of losing consciousness. This state of constant semi-asphyxia made her passive, weak, and dependent, which was exactly what was required of the ideal Victorian wife. The weight of the dresses of that time was enormous. A dress could weigh more than 10 kilograms. The bride carried this burden all day long on her wedding day, standing at the ceremony and dancing at the ball. By the time she reached the bedroom, she was physically exhausted. She had no strength left to resist, to feel emotions, or to try to understand what was happening. Fatigue dulled her senses, putting her into a state of trance or stupor. The corset deformed her internal organs, which often led to health problems and constant ailments. Women got used to living with background pain, considering it a natural price to pay for beauty and status. This habit of enduring physical discomfort carried over into marital relationships. If the corset caused pain every day, why should the wedding night be an exception? Suffering was perceived as an integral part of a woman's lot in life, prescribed by a higher power. At that time, there was a cult of the wasp waist, for which women made monstrous sacrifices. Rigid plates of whalebone dug into the body, leaving marks that they were ashamed to show even to a doctor. The corset created an artificial shape that replaced the real body, and when that shape disappeared, only confusion remained. She felt like an unprotected mollusk that had been pulled out of its shell. Even after removing the corset, the woman continued to feel its phantom pressure on her ribs and psyche. She could not relax, could not breathe deeply, habitually keeping her back straight. The internal corset of prohibitions and rules sat much deeper than the external one made of fabric and whalebone. And it was impossible to remove this internal clamp, either on the first night or in the years that followed. It was a prison that the woman carried with her everywhere. Like this, if you are also struck by the sacrifices women of the past made to conform to fashion and social expectations. What I am about to show you is banned in 12 countries as an example of abuse. But back then it was called etiquette. The layout of wealthy homes in the Victorian and Gilded Age contributed to the alienation of spouses. In huge mansions, there was a clear division between the male and female halves. The husband had his own bedroom. The wife had hers, often connected by only a single door. This created the illusion of personal space, but in reality turned the husband's visit into a formal and intimidating event. The interiors of these bedrooms were often oppressively luxurious and cold. High ceilings, dark wood, heavy furniture. All this created the atmosphere of a museum rather than a cozy nest. In such rooms, a person felt small and insignificant. The cold that reigned in the huge rooms penetrated to the bones, forcing one to wrap up in blankets. The physical cold intensified the feeling of emotional loneliness and abandonment. Sometimes the door between the bedrooms was locked, but her husband always had the key. This symbolized his complete power over access to his wife's body. She couldn't shut herself off from him unless she wanted a scandal, but he could shut himself off from her. This lack of control over her own space deprived her of a sense of security. Even in her own room, she could not feel completely safe. In the morning, life returned to normal, as if nothing had happened during the night. The maid opened the curtains, brought tea, and a new day began for the socialite. The contrast between nighttime fear and daytime routine created a sense of split personality. The servants noticed their mistress's movements, which added a humiliating public dimension to the situation. The wife knew that the maids were discussing her intimate life, whispering in corners. The servants' glances burned her back, making her blush. Sometimes the woman tried to turn her bedroom into a fortress, filling it with furniture and knickknacks. But no velvet pillows could protect her from the intrusion of reality. The luxury of the interior only emphasized the poverty of human relationships. A gilded cage remained a cage, even if the bars were entwined with roses. Architecture worked against women, reinforcing their subordinate position. Do you think separate bedrooms helped preserve marriages, or, on the contrary, destroyed them from within? In the next chapter, we will find out what the doctors of the time had to say. Medicine in the Victorian era and the Gilded Age was completely controlled by men and reflected their views of the world. Doctors of the time sincerely believed that women were weak, nervous creatures devoid of healthy needs. The famous phrase attributed to Queen Victoria or one of the aristocrats, "Close your eyes and think of England," became the motto of the era. It meant that intimacy was not a pleasure, but a patriotic and family duty. Women were instructed to shut down their feelings, emotions, and even their minds during intercourse. They were supposed to become passive objects, sacrificing themselves for the sake of procreation. This attitude blocked any possibility of mutuality. He was advised to be persistent but gentle, and she was advised to be submissive. This asymmetry in medical advice reinforced inequality in marriage. The science of the time served the social demand for female submission. Books on housekeeping and marital hygiene, written by men, were full of absurd recommendations. For example, they advised sleeping in a cool room to cool the blood or avoiding spicy foods. All this advice was aimed at suppressing libido, not harmonizing relationships. Women were convinced that their bodies were enemies that needed to be kept in check, and this enemy woke up every night, causing suffering. Such medicine was just another tool of control. It stood guard over patriarchy, not health, and the most vulnerable became victims of this system. Are you ready for the shocking truth about how married life began the next morning? The dawn after the first wedding night often brought not relief, but a sharp sense of shame and awkwardness. The magic of the wedding celebration disappeared, leaving behind a harsh reality. A woman would wake up, if she managed to fall asleep at all, with the feeling that she had changed irrevocably, that she had lost a part of herself. Looking in the mirror was painful. It seemed to her that all the events of the previous night were written on her face. Meeting her husband at breakfast was the first test in her new role. She had to look him in the eye, make small talk, drink tea as if nothing had happened. But now there was a wall of awkward silence between them, or worse, his smug look. The woman felt exposed even in her tightly buttoned morning dress. Every glance from him reminded her of her vulnerability and dependence during the night. Changes were also taking place in her attitude toward her own body. It no longer belonged to her. It had become a tool for satisfying her husband and producing heirs. Some found solace in religion, seeing their marriage as a cross to bear. Others withdrew into themselves, becoming cold and emotionally unavailable. Still others began to play the role of the perfect doll, hiding their souls behind a porcelain smile. Each chose her own way of surviving the catastrophe of losing her innocence. But there were also those who couldn't cope. Quiet tears in the library, sudden hysterics over trifles, nervous fevers. All these were cries for help that no one wanted to hear. Society demanded that women have the strength of spirit to hide their wounds, and she hid them, powdering her tear-stained eyes before going out to greet guests. Do you think time could heal these wounds? Or did they remain with the woman forever, determining her entire future? Immediately after the wedding, A new, even more powerful pressure was placed on the young wife: the demand to bear an heir. Marriage in high society was, first and foremost, a mechanism for transferring property and titles. A woman was seen as a vessel necessary for the continuation of the family line. If pregnancy did not occur in the first few months, the whispering, sidelong glances, and reproaches of relatives began. This expectation turned intimate life into compulsory work with a clear production plan. The process of conception itself, devoid of love and passion, became a mechanical act. The woman lay there and prayed that it would work, just so they would leave her alone. The child was not the fruit of love, but a way to buy peace and status. The birth of a son, and specifically a son, was the only way to justify her existence in this house. Daughters were often perceived as a disappointment, defective goods. The fear of childbirth was no less than the fear of the first night. In those days, mortality during childbirth was high, even among the wealthy. A woman knew that every pregnancy could be her last. She wrote her will, said goodbye to her loved ones, preparing for the arrival of a new life as if it were a deadly battle. This fear of death hung over the marital bed like the sword of Damocles. Infertile women were subjected to real ostracism. They were taken to resorts, given dubious potions to drink, and subjected to humiliating examinations. Their whole life turned into endless treatment for non-existent diseases. A feeling of inferiority ate away at their souls, poisoning every day. They looked at other people's children with envy and pain, realizing that they had failed to live up to expectations. The pressure of the dynasty did not take feelings and desires into account. It was a ruthless machine for reproducing the elite. A woman was just a cog in this mechanism, a replaceable part. If one broke down, died, or did not give birth, they looked for another. History knows many examples when widowers remarried only for the sake of an heir. In this race for inheritance, the most important thing was lost: human warmth. Children born out of duty often grew up cold and unhappy, repeating the fate of their parents. The dynasty survived, but the price of this survival was paid with women's tears. When the pressure became unbearable and outright refusal was impossible, women found the only path to freedom available to them: illness. The disability of the Victorian wife became a kind of social phenomenon. Migraines, fainting spells, nervous weakness, and mysterious ailments allowed them to legally close the bedroom door. A sick wife evoked sympathy rather than condemnation, and this was her shield against marital obligations. Husbands often resigned themselves to the role of caregiver to their perpetually ill wives. This allowed them to seek solace elsewhere with a clear conscience, while maintaining the appearance of propriety. An unspoken agreement developed. She would not interfere with his life, and he would not touch her. Such marriages could last for decades, outwardly respectable but dead inside. The image of a fragile, pale, sickly woman became fashionable. It was considered aristocratic and refined. Health and a rosy complexion were associated with peasant women. Therefore, women even artificially maintained a state of weakness by taking arsenic for paleness or vinegar. Being sick was profitable and fashionable. However, the price of such salvation was high. Women voluntarily excluded themselves from active life. They spent their best years in the dim light of a bedroom smelling of medicine. They lost touch with their children, with society, with reality. Illness became a prison that they built themselves to protect themselves from another prison: marriage. It was a slow suicide of personality, a rejection of life for the sake of preserving integrity. The tragedy was that healthy, energetic women turned themselves into shadows because society left them no other choice but to say no. The irony is that many of these disabled women outlived their husbands by decades. As soon as the source of stress disappeared, their husbands died. The widows miraculously recovered. They began to travel, engage in charity work, and manage estates. This is the best proof that their illness was an allergy to lack of freedom. Victorian society and the Gilded Age were a culture of appearances. What mattered was not what was really going on, but how it looked from the outside. Women were the chief decorators of this facade. Social gossip was a cruel weapon. If someone found out that in an ideal family, the husband tyrannized his wife, or that they slept in different wings of the castle, it would have been a scandal. Therefore, women remained silent, guarding the secrets of their tormentors. They became accomplices to their own misfortune. Creating the appearance of well-being required enormous mental strength. Loneliness in a crowd is the most accurate description of such a woman's life. Surrounded by hundreds of people, music, and laughter, but with no one to talk to heart to heart. Even with friends, the only topics of conversation were clothes, children, and the weather. Sincerity was dangerous. Any careless word could be used against you. Women lived in a communication vacuum, surrounded by luxury. Sometimes this facade cracked. Famous stories about kleptomania among aristocrats or sudden hysterics at receptions are breakthroughs of a suppressed psyche. When the pressure became unbearable, control failed. But society quickly swept the dirt under the rug, declaring the woman sick or exhausted. The elite system of self-preservation worked flawlessly. The house, which was a palace of receptions for guests, was often a battlefield for the hostess. She had to keep track of the menu, the servants, and the decor to ensure that everything was perfect. Any mistake in receiving guests could provoke her husband's anger. She worked for her husband's reputation, often without even receiving gratitude. Her labor was invisible but mandatory. History remembers their portraits in the ceremonial halls, but forgets their tears in the bedrooms at night. We admire their dresses, not knowing the price they paid for the right to wear them. They were great actresses by necessity, whose stage was life and whose audience was a ruthless society. The tragedy of Victorian wives did not end with their lives. It was passed on to their daughters and granddaughters, poisoning subsequent generations. Children who grew up in an atmosphere of coldness and hidden fear absorbed these patterns of behavior. Daughters saw their mother's suffering and learned to fear marriage. Sons saw their father's detachment and learned to treat women as objects. The chain of trauma stretched across decades. Liberation was slow. It took 2 world wars and a sexual revolution for women to gain the right to their own bodies and voices. But echoes of Victorian morality can still be heard today. Shame, silence about problems, fear of condemnation. All of this is a legacy of those times that we are still overcoming. Diaries and letters from that time found years later opened our eyes to the true feelings of these women. They are not dry reports of balls, but cries from the soul. "I feel like a bird with clipped wings," wrote one of them. These documents became an indictment of an era that placed propriety above humanity. Today we look at these fates with sympathy and horror. We understand that no amount of wealth is worth the freedom to be oneself. These women became invisible victims of history, the foundation on which our modern understanding of marriage as a union of equals is built. Their suffering was not in vain if we remember them. It is important to remember that behind the beautiful picture of the past often lies pain. The romanticization of the Victorian era and the Gilded Age in movies and books often erases these dark spots. But knowing the truth means respecting the memory of those who lived in golden cages. This is a lesson for us. External prosperity can never replace inner happiness and freedom. But have all the golden cages disappeared? Or have they simply changed form? Social pressure, glossy standards, the demand to be perfect? These are all new faces of an old enemy. The history of Victorian women teaches us to be more attentive to ourselves and our daughters, not allowing imposed ideals to break living souls. This legacy of fear must end with us. We must speak where they were silent, love where they suffered, and live life to the fullest for ourselves and for them. We have lifted the heavy velvet curtains and peered into the dark corners of the most glittering era in history. The fates of Victorian women are a reminder that there is another side to every coin. Behind the balls, tiaras, and mansions lay broken lives, fear, and loneliness. These women were prisoners of their time, hostages to a morality that denied them the right to feel. Their stories teach us to appreciate the freedom of choice we have today. They remind us that true intimacy is impossible without trust and equality, and that wealth cannot replace the warmth of human relationships. Let their tears remain in the past, but the memory of them will help us build a more honest and happy future. What topics from the lives of women of the past would you like us to explore in future episodes? Perhaps you are interested in the fate of governesses or the secrets of royal courts. Write your suggestions in the comments and don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on new journeys into history.